Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming for this session. So, we'll be starting shortly. We have about 74 attendants today, and I thought it would be great if each one of us could type in the chat box, briefly introducing ourselves. You can say your name, whichever name you would like to be called, what your educational level and profession is, and then where you work. It somehow helps, keeping track of everyone. I'll give you like a couple of minutes to do that. All right, we're having a lot of people from different places. Thank you very much for everyone who's joined us today. We have people from different universities, I guess, and public institutions, and also few people from other NGOs. And that's really great because feels like we're having everyone from everywhere. So now I'll move on, introduce today's speaker, myself, and we'll move on to the presentation. But in the meantime, I would like to say a few things on the basic rules of a virtual meeting because we've been having a lot of problems lately. So please mute yourself all the time, unless when you're speaking, and videos also are encouraged to be muted unless you're speaking. And we know all this, but we kind of need to be reminded, so often. So just to give you a brief background of myself, I am Theodros Workneh. You can call me Teddy, Ted, it doesn't matter. I'm a medical doctor and a public health professional. I've been working in this area for the past 7 years in general. And currently I'm working at Japaigo. My work encompasses healthcare management, health system strengthening, and humanitarian response. And I'm very much interested in evidence-based responses. So I'm into research, qualitative and quantitative research, all in all. And I'm also deputy chair for Standing Committee on Medical Research and Scholarship that was established by Ethiopian Medical Association. So I'm here in that capacity. And I have my friend here who's really passionate about research and well known for her vocal on research related issues. Tigist, you can call her Tiki, I guess. So she's been gracing us with her presence for the past few rounds here, presenting research related knowledge, data, and she'll continue to do that. She's a medical doctor and a public health professional, just like me, and she's currently working in her own private entity called Medical Research Lounge. If you haven't, I think it's better to check it out because they have a lot of good things going on there. And she's also the secretary for the Standing Committee for Medical Research and Scholarship. And she's more than that, but we'll give her that for today. So unless the person from EMA has additional information, we can go ahead and start the presentation, but I'll give it to, I don't know who is hosting us from EMA, if they have anything to say before we start. Over. All right, so I don't think they have anything else to add. So I'll give it to Tigist. Tiggy, over to you.
Thank you, Teddy. Thank you so much. It was a very generous introduction. I think for the sake of time, I'm going to start with the lecture. እንትኖቹን እኔም እያየሁ ነበርና it's very nice ጻፉ ማለትህና I'm like wow from all over Ethiopia ነው ሰው አቴንድ እያደረጋለሁ እና it's really nice. Emma should keep up the good work. ሁሉንም ሰው እንደዚህ የሚያሳትፍ ነገር ፕላትፎርም መፈጠሩ ጥሩ ነው and I'm happy I have እንደዚህ አይነት audience. So I think past sessions አቴንድ ያደረጋችሁ ሰዎች ትኖራላችሁ ብዬ አስባለሁ. It's more of an extension to those lectures. So what we did was in the past two lectures research design ማድረግ including its study design, and after that demo measures of association እንዴት ነው calculate የምናደርገው, what to use, when to use, for what kind of study design, for what kind of research question እንጠቀማለን የሚለውን ያየ ነው. The problem that I usually face is after students are through their proposal and collect data, they jump to the analysis part, and I don't know why, but data management part is not covered at all, even at schools like I don't know about the PhD program, but in master's program they don't cover data management, but it's a very important and critical aspect of research undertaking, and it's something that we all should do and we all should be aware of. So in this lecture we're going to cover what data management is and what its components are. So data management is it's a process that lies after we collect our data. What we have is just simply a spreadsheet of an information of like 300, 400 patients. Between that and making meaning out of the data, which is analysis, we have to do a few things. We have to code our data, we have to clean it and validate it, we have to store it in a proper storing site so that we can get it back anytime we want. Especially storing it is very important because for publication, people usually throw out their data after conducting the research and finishing their report. But when we publish our research works, there is, especially nowadays, it's becoming universal. The journals will ask our de-identified data. So if we don't have the data, they will assume it's just fabricated data and they will not publish it. So it's very important to store our data, even if it's like something that we have conducted years back. So after that, we have to process and organize it. And it's only after these processes that we should go to the analysis part, doing the frequencies, the percentage, the measure of association, our odds ratio, and other stuffs. So it's very important to do these things. And data management can be conducted in almost any of the softwares that we know, including EPInfo, Spaces, Data, and SAS and R softwares. So let's start with data coding. Data coding is simply it's a process of grouping our raw data into different groups and assigning codes to it. So why do you think is necessary to do a grouping of our data and assigning code? Can anybody tell me? You can inbox it. So what's the relevance of coding our data? So the first part of data management is coding our data, giving it codes like zeros and ones and twos. So what's the relevance of doing that? Coding, most people are not comfortable doing the coding using the softwares. and others. So what's the relevance of coding if it bothers the researcher? Why even, what's the necessity of doing it? Is it really critical? What's the necessity of coding our data? Okay, maybe for the sake of time, I'll proceed. So the purpose is, thank you, is really recognizable by the software. Thank you. Yes, our statistical softwares, they read numerical codes rather than just the non-numerical information. Let's say if we have gender information and we give it as, we label it as male and female, we can run some of the analysis like frequency distribution or cross-tabulation, but when we start to run higher tastes like even t-taste or regression analysis, our software demands codes rather than non-numerical data. So we have to label the female and male as 1 and 2 or 0 and 1 or whatever codes that we're interested in. So it's for the purpose of analysis. So when we code our data, which is our data means it's a response for our study variables. So our study variables can have 2 different types of natures. So based on that, our coding also depends on that. So the possible type of questions that we encounter depends on the type of variable our study contains. The first one is categorical variables, the other is numeric. For the first one, there are 3 possible types. When we are using a structured questionnaire, that means we have already coded the question even before collecting the data. For example, gender. We know that we have only 2 possible responses, at least in Ethiopia. So we're comfortable labeling it as 1 and 2, and we don't give it any other partly open-ended options, because we have exhausted all the options and all the answers are going to fall within these 2 codes. The other is partly coded questions, which is when we're using semi-structured questions. For example, if we're studying drug adherence of some chronic illness, and if we're asking drug discontinuation reasons, we can have these options from what we have observed and from what we believe that could be a frequent responses. We can design this, and I mean, we can say drug side effect, unavailability of the drug, cost of the drug. We're comfortable that these 3 factors are potential factors from what we have observed so far, but it's always good to leave a space for the participant to provide their own answer, so that they can address the response that we haven't considered in our options. So we always leave the other option when we're not comfortable that we're not comfortable enough to say that we have addressed all the possible options. So in this case, from the other response, we might get some large response. So from the other responses, we can have like A, B, C, different responses. And from this, let's say B could have large response and should not be included in the other response. So we're expected to give it another code, a different code from what we have already coded. So this type of partly coded questions, they need further coding. And the third one is, I'm sorry for the mistake, the third one is completely open-ended questions. For example, if we don't have any idea about the study variable, it's better to leave it as an open-ended question so that the participants can answer on their own. So we can ask the same question, the drug discontinuation reason, as an open-ended question. So it definitely needs coding after we obtain the data. The other group is numerical variables. Numerical variables are uncoded or open-ended. For example, age. It's a very important tip is numerical variables always, this is like, I don't know, 85% of the time encounter a Marago problem, no? So any numeric variable, actually for that matter, like any variable in its natural form, you know, collect መደረግ ያለበት. Age ብለን we can ask like this, or we can ask like 10 to 19, 20 to 29, 30 to 39. questionnaire ብዙ ጊዜ እንደዚህ ይዘን ነው የምንሄደው, ግን this is not appropriate because the natural form of measurement scale of age is continuous numeric. not categorical. So we're not supposed to collect it as categorical. Rather, we have to obtain the data as it is in its natural scale of measurement, and then later we will categorize it. And this works for income, I don't know, weight, height, all numeric variables, laboratory values, and all other parameters that we are supposed to measure as a number. They should be measured as a number initially. So after this, it definitely needs coding so that the data can make better sense when interpreting it. So how do we code? When we create codes, what we do is for the partly open-ended questions, which is for the other response group, we are supposed to give a new code. And for entirely open-ended questions also, we're supposed to give code. For example, for the previous example, initially, እኛ ያሰብነው የሰጠነው code እንደዚህ ነበር 1 2 3 and 4 እንደዚህ አይነት code ስንሰጠው እኛ ያሰብነው from our observation the first 3 are the most common reasons for drug discontinuation. ከዛ ግን እኛ ያላየነው factor behind ልናገኝ እንችላለን። ለምሳሌ religion even እዚህ ውስጥ ካሉት ውስጥ ከcost of drug የበለጠ reason ሆኖ አግኝተናል። ስለዚህ we might need to give it a different code ማለት ነው። initially ካሰብነው 1 2 3 4 ካልነው ውጪ maybe religionን 4 አድርገን and other ብለን ሌሎቹ other reasons 5 ብለን ልናስገባ እንችላለን ማለት ነው። ስለዚህ coding partly open-ended questions, the other category መጀመሪያ እንዳሰብነው ሁሌ ላይሄድ ስለሚችል we have to cross check with it and we might need to create new groups. And the other is for numerical values. For example, age as it is ከወሰድነው በኋላ most of the time we prefer to analyze it in a categorical form. ለምንድን ነው? Why do we prefer the categorical form for a numeric variable for analysis? What's the rationale? What's the rationale? Why do we have to categorize it? Age as it is, like 30, 31, 45, ምናምን ተብሎ ተሰበሰበው አለ። ግን we usually categorize it for the purpose of analysis. What's the relevance of this? Interactive እንዲሆን አብረን እያወራን ብንሄድ ጥሩ ነው። It makes analysis complex. The first one, it doesn't actually. ቁጥርም ቢሆን ካቴጎሪም ቢሆን it's perfectly fine. ግን አንድ maybe እንዲረዳችሁ አንድ ኢንተርፕሬቴሽን ሰጣችሁ። ለምሳሌ ኤጅን ከዲዚዝ አውትካም ጋር ያየን ቢሆን disease outcome, the first one እንደ ቁጥር አድረስ ካደረግነው አናሊሲሱ ላይ ምንድነው የሚሆነው? as age increases by 1 year, the risk of dying increases by 1.02 times ሊሆን ይችላል። ስለዚህ as age increases by 1 year ነው 1 year increase risk of death ላይ ምን ያህል times higher እንዲሆን ያደርገዋል ነው። በዚህኛው ፎርም ግን ከወሰደ ምንድነው የሚሆነው? ለምሳሌ ይሄኛውን ሪፈረንስ ግሩፓችን ብናደርግ the odds of okay በሪስክ ስለጀመረን በሪስክ ቀጥል the risk of dying is 1.02 times higher among age groups of 20 to 29 compared to 10 to 19 ይላል ነው። በዚህ ወይ የሄደ ሲሄድ አሁን ምን አይነት stratified የሆነ ሪስፖንስ እናገኛለን? ይሄኛው ሪፈረንሳችን ቢሆን ይሄን ሪፈረንስ አድርገን ሰራ ይሄኛው ኤጅ ግሩፕ 1.02 ታይምስ ሃየር ሪስክ አለው፣ ይሄኛው ግሩፕ ደግሞ 2.71 ታይምስ ሃየር ሪስክ አለው እያለ ይሄዳል። ሶ ከመጀመሪያው ኢንፎርሜሽን እና ከሁለተኛው ኢንፎርሜሽን as a clinician ስታዩት ወይም as a decision maker as I don't know as a leader ስታዩት የትኛው ሴንስ ይሰጣል more? It's not about the assumption ምናምን። yes assumptionዎች እንሰራለን። እሺ መልሶቻችሁን እያየሁ ነው። it's very good assumptions እንሰራለን። really the first one ነው more sense የሚሰጠው። ለምሳሌ እዚህ ጋር the first one ላይ as age increases by 1 year የሚሰጠን perspective ምንድነው? እድሜ በጨመረ ቁጥር risk of death ይጨምራል ነው። a specific age group target አድርገ ማለት resource limitation አለው, we all know that. ሶ ሁሉንም ኤጅ ግሩፕ አድሬስ ማድረግ አንችልም። ለምሳሌ አሁን ኮቪድ ቫክሲን ሲመጣ በአንድ ጊዜ ለሁሉም ኤጅ ግሩፕ አልመጣም አይደል? ሃይ ሪስክ የሆኑትን እንሰጣለው ተባለ፣ ሄልት ኬር ፕሮፌሽናልስ ኤንድ 65 ኤንድ አባቭ ወይም ኮሞርቢዲቲ ያላቸው ተባለ ያለ እየወረደ ኤጅ ሊሚቱ እየወረደ ወደ ለስ ሪስክ ወደ ሆኑት ማነው ግሩፕ ኦፍ ዘ ሶሳይቲ እየወረደ ከዛ ወደ ህፃናቶችን መጣ ማለት ነው አይደል? ሶ ሪሶርስ ሊሚቴሽን ስላለ ኢን ተርምስ ኦፍ ሪሶርስ ብታስቡት የትኛው ነው ታርጌትድ የሆነ ኢንተርቬንሽን ለመስጠት የሚጠቅመን? the first one ነው ወይስ the second one? ኦኬ the second one አይደለም? the second one አሁን ምን እያለ ነው? ትንሽ ሰዎችን ብቻ ታርጌት አድርገን መስራት የምንችለው ፕሮጀክት ቢሆን ለምሳሌ የትኛውን ፖፑሌሽን ግሩፕ ነው እዚህ ጋር በደንብ ፎከስ ሰተን ማየት ያለብን? እዚህ ጋር 2.7 ታይምስ ሞር ሪስክ ይላል፣ እዚህ ጋር 1.02። ስለዚህ መጀመሪያ ይሄኛውን ከ30 እስከ 39 ያሉትን ማኔጅ ካደረግን በኋላ ነው ወደዚህኞቹ የምንሄደው፣ ምክንያቱም ሪስካቸው እኩል ስላልሆነ ማለት ነው። the first one የሚነግረን ግን በቃ ኤጅ ሲጨምር አብሮ the risk of dying from the disease አብሮ ይጨምራል ነው። it's very vague. so የ20 ዓመቱ ከ19 ዓመቱ ሞር ሪስክ አለው፣ 21ዱ ከ20 ሞር ሪስክ አለው እያለ ነው እንጂ የሚሄደው ስፔሲፊክ ኤጅ ግሩፕ ላይ ማነው እንደዚህ ክላሲፋይ አድርገን ይሄኛው ግሩፕ ሃይ ሪስክ ነው ብለን እንድንናገር አያደርገንም ማለት ነው። ስለዚህ yes the second one is better። ለዛ ነው ራሽናሉ የምንከፍለው እንጂ ዴታውን ስንሰበስበውን በዛ መልክ እንድንሰበስበው ተብሎ አይደለም። እና it's reasonable። እኔም ሪሰርቾችን ስሰራ I create categories instead of using it as a numerical variable. So how do we create categories? It's very important. ሁላችንም የምንሰራበት ስለሆነ ለዛ ነው ፎከስ ያደረኩበት። እንዴት ነው ካታጎሪስ ክሬት የምናደርገው? Do you know any techniques for categorizing numerical variables? Okay, there are two possible techniques. The first one is using statistical methods, what we call Sturge's rule, and the other is using scientific background or logic, or in other words, creating clinically meaningful categories rather than relying on the statistics. I'm a fan of statistics. I rely on statistics for my research, but when creating a category, relying on the statistics is not proper, because the statistical values could give us some clinically non-meaningful categories. So every time if you have to classify your data, you should rely on what you know from your clinical practice, not from the statistics, because the clinically meaningful categories will give you like the normal range, the low range, the high range, and so on, so that later the interpretation of the result will give more sense and you can intervene properly. So I prefer the scientific basis for classifying your data. The Sturge's rule, if you are studying MPH, you know what Sturge's rule is, and since we're not going to use it, I'm not going to talk about that. So when we code, there are a few tips that we should follow. The first one is we have to give each and every data entry a unique ID. This is very important because one of the data cleaning process is avoiding duplicate entries. So we have to give each and every data entry a unique ID. Fortunately for us, since we're dealing with, most of the time we're dealing with patients, we already have a unique ID, which is MRN. So don't forget to collect their MRN when you collect data. The second one is we have to create functional or analyzable group when we code our data. For example, if you have a question, which asks which of the following symptoms do you have for your patient, and if the answers are 1 fever, 2 cough, 3 shortness of breath, 4 headache, and if the patient has, if let's say the first patient has fever, you'll tell me the answers for this. So the patient has fever, what's the code that I should be giving? Let's say the first patient 001 has fever, what code should I enter into my software? What's the code that I should give for my, yes, 1, right? So what if the patient has shortness of breath? The second patient has shortness of breath. What's the proper code? 3, great. So the third patient has cough and shortness of breath. What's the code that I should give, I should feed into my software? the patient has cough and shortness of breath. So 2 and 3. So if you are familiar with spaces or any of the statistical softwares, for a single entry, what you can enter is only one code. You can't enter more than one code. It should be either 2 or 3. You can't enter 2 codes at a time. You can't say like 2 and 1. From the options, you can only enter one code at a time. So what should thank you? We have to create dummy variables, right? So what are dummy variables? Elahun, maybe? It needs another code, but not necessarily. Not necessarily. Like cough and shortness of breath, they are like a common symptoms that can be analyzed on their own. We're not supposed to categorize everything for the sake of avoiding that. Rather than that, what we're supposed to do is we have to create dummy variables. We can do that on the software, or we can do that earlier when we collect our data by breaking down the symptom categories as questions themselves. So instead of asking which of the following symptoms do you have, we can ask the patient, do you have fever? Yes, no. Do you have cough? Do you have shortness of breath? Do you have headache? So this way we dichotomized our question based on the symptoms the patients have. So no symptom will be when the patient says no to all of the 4 questions, then that patient can be regarded as asymptomatic. So this is the proper way of collecting our data. And not only collecting our data on the software, it should be entered like this so that it can be analyzed properly. So creating functional or analyzable group is very important. The other is when we code, as you have seen so far, for binary data, I've been using like 0s and 1s or 1 and 2. Both are fine for our independent variables. We can use 0, 1, 1, 2. I mean, we can make the smallest code 0 or 1. It doesn't matter for exposure or independent variables, but for dependent variables, the coding has to be 0 and 1. Some softwares understand the dependent variable when the smallest code is 0. For example, spaces. Stata. On spaces, it's fine if you code the dependent variable as 0, 0, 1 or 1, 2, it reads that. But when we're doing advanced analysis, and if we want to export our data to Stata, the Stata won't understand it, so we have to recode again. So instead of doing that, it's always better to anticipate all the potential change during our analysis and use the proper coding that suits every software. So when you code your dependent variable or outcome variable, make the smallest code 0. And the other is we have to create mutually exclusive and precisely define categories. For example, when we categorize age for the software, we have to give it like this, like 20 to 29, 30 to 39. This is the proper way of coding it so that each category is mutually exclusive. If you can see this, it says 20 to 30, 30 to 40. This is not proper, because if you have a patient who's 30 years old, it will be included in both groups. The analysis would include it in both groups. And if you have 40 years old patient, the analysis would include the patient in both groups. So we should avoid that, and we should make sure each and every category is mutually exclusive when we're creating categorical responses. So the other is consistent coding. Oh, I'm sorry. The other is consistent coding. Consistent coding is when we interpret our results, it will be like we label one of the responses as reference, and the other will be the result that we're going to narrate. So we have to make it consistent so that our interpretation of the results will be consistent and will make more sense for the reader and for us to interpret it. So if we label fever as 0, no, 1 and 2 yes, we should label cough as the same way. If we label fever no, 1 and cough yes, one, it will become inconsistent and it will mislead us eventually when we interpret it. When we interpret the result, we will interpret it as if every code is consistent, and it will mislead us and mislead our readers. So we shouldn't do that. We should always keep a consistent coding. If no is one, then throughout the data, if there is a no yes question, one has to be no, two has to be yes. The other consistency that we should be maintaining is one is not only saved for the no responses, but it's also better to code normal values as the smallest code, so that later we can use it as a reference. So if you have BMI and you're collecting it at a categorical data, then one normal, two underweight, three overweight, and four you can make it other. And when we are interpreting our results, it would be nice to interpret it as patients with hypertension, as compared to those with no hypertension, have a higher risk of dying from the disease. And the same patients who are underweight have a higher risk of dying from the disease as compared to patients with normal BMI. So the interpretation will make more sense when we make our references the normal one. So we should maintain this consistency, and it will make our life a lot easier. If some of you are already analyzing your data, I'm sure you understand what I'm trying to say. So we should avoid using inconsistent coding. Like here, it uses one as an underweight, and our interpretation will not make more sense if we code it like this. So we should stick to the normal values or as our smallest code. And the other is giving the reference category the smallest code for all variables. Reference category, I personally prefer to use to make my reference categories the responses which are coded with the smallest code. For example, here I want my reference to be fever, no, cough, no, hypertension, no, and BMI normal. So if you give the smallest code for all your variables, then the interpretation will be easy. If we have time, maybe I can show you on the spaces after this, and you'll understand better what I'm trying to say. The other is missing value has to be always considered when you enter your data. Definitely you will encounter a missing value. When you have a missing value, make sure to give it a unique code so that it will not be misinterpreted as an actual response. For example, if you have, if for gender, you labeled one as male, two as female, you have to make your missing value code something very different from one and two. And normally, actually, what's the common trend to use is like 99, 999, and something like that. So that when you see this number, you know that it's a missing value and it's not a data entry error. So it's important to give a missing value code a unique code. So I think to make more sense, it's better to practice. Let me share the link here, and you can practice and you can drop your questions on the way. Oh, I think I have shared the link on the chat box, and please try it. Teddy, do you have any suggestion?
No, no specific suggestion. I do well. The form works well for my end, so
Okay.
I don't know if there is restriction from your side.
Oh, okay. The form works, right?
It works for me.
Okay.
Anyone
I just
else with
unlocked
the
it.
same trouble? Oh, okay,
It
yes.
should be working now. some of the questions have multiple response, and make sure to mark all the correct answers. Shall we proceed, Teddy?
I think so, but it depends
For the
on
sake of time,
responses.
you
Yeah, you
can,
have,
yeah, you can practice it later. And I'm sorry, I'm going to lock the forum now. I have to, so that you can focus on what we're going to discuss. So the other, you can see the screen, right? So the
Yes.
after coding our data, the other thing to do is cleaning our data. It's very important to clean our data so that it doesn't have any errors, but cleaning data should not result in losing a valid data. So we have to make sure what we're going to clean is just a data entry that's error and cannot be analyzed. But we should make sure that a valid data is not cleaned. So what we're going to encounter is, I'm sorry, the image is a bit blurry, but you can adjust it on your PC since I have shared with you the PowerPoint. So the first one that you can encounter is missing data. When we have missing data, there are different ways of handling it. The first one is if the variable is a must-have variable. A must-have variable means a variable, like it could be our dependent variable or a very important independent variable that we want to analyze. If we miss that kind of data, then what we're supposed to do is, if there is another primary source for the data, we have to go and confirm and make sure we get the data. But if we can't obtain the data, we have to delete the entire entry of that patient, because we can't analyze a data which doesn't have the critical variables like the outcome of the study. The other is if when we're dealing with numeric variables, and if the variable has missing values up to like less than 20%, there's a statistical way of replacing the missing data. Replacing the missing values with the mean of the remaining values is a trend. So we're not going to talk about that, but there are statistical methods to replace a missing data for a numerical variable if the variable has less than 20% missing values from the entire data set. The other is incompletely filled questionnaire. If we encounter an incompletely filled questionnaire, what we're supposed to do is, if that incompletely filled questionnaire misses a very important variable, like the ones that we have discussed above, or 50% of the question, like let's say that the questionnaire has like 10 questions, and if more than 50% of the questions, like 6 of the questions are not answered, we have to discard the entire data for that particular participant, so that it will not be analyzed. Because if we try to replace the 6 variable responses by logic or by some other statistical methods, then the entry for this patient is going to be like completely, like more than 50% fabricated. So we don't want that kind of thing to happen. So if more than 50% of the questions are unanswered, then we have to discard that entry. The other is coding errors or incorrect values. Sometimes when our data encoders enter the data, they might type an incorrect value. So if we have, for example, for gender, we have 1 and 2 for male and female, but if we get a value of 3 or 4, then what we can do is we go back to the original data source if that's accessible, and try to get the proper answer. Or we can use logic. For example, if for a male respondent, if you get an answer that says yes to a question of pregnancy, then it's logical to correct the answer for pregnancy status into not applicable. So most of the time, I think based on the responses of the other variables, we can feel comfortable to logically replace the value. But if logic doesn't make sense, and if we cannot get the primary source of the data, then we have to remove the data entry as it is. The other is we have to be able to check for logical consistency. Logical consistency is very important. Cross tabulation I think most of you are familiar with cross tabulation. Cross tabulation is very good when we do data management and cleaning. It's very good way of checking if our data is properly collected. For example, if we have when we are studying some disease condition, and if we ask if the patient has comorbid illness as a no yes question, and finally the only comorbid illness that we get is diabetes, then the 2x2 table that we expect should be let's say if we have 50 DM cases, then all of the 50 DM cases, they have to be here, because all the DM, if only DM is the only comorbid illness among the study population, then all the 50 DM cases, they have to be here. But here it says 40 and 10 of them are here. So we have to make sure that this is a false entry or this is actually an incorrect data. The same also for yes. We said all of the comorbid illness conditions are diabetic, so we don't expect on the no part, we don't expect any number. We expect all of the comorbid conditions to be diabetic. So running a simple cross tabulation will tell us if our data is not logically consistent or not. This is a very important tool. You should use it. So when we get such illogical data, what we can do is we go back to the original data set. If we have access to it, check if the answers are correct or not. And if we can't get that, then we have to delete the entire response, because the result will be inaccurate. The other is duplicating trees. Duplicating trees can be found, especially if we have multiple data encoders. They might mistakenly enter the same data by different encoders. We say to track duplicating trees, we have to use unique ID like MRN. So if we find the same data entry for a given patient, then we have to remove the duplicating tree. The final one is outliers. Outliers can be true outliers, or they can be error in data entry. So most of the time, the error outliers can be easily identified using your clinical judgment. For example, if we find the age of a participant to be 210, we know that so far we don't have that kind of age, at least in our setup. I don't know. So you can comfortably say that this is an error in data entry. So you can go back to the patient's record and check the true age. But if it's a true outlier, we can present it in our descriptive statistics, but we have to remove it from further regression analysis because it will not make sense. So I think we can also skip this for now and we can practice it later. Or can we take 2 minutes? This one is a very short practice. Can we take 2 minutes, Teddy?
Yeah, sure. Please share the form. Well, I'll
This is
check
the
if it is
form. It
working
would
or
be
not.
good to, because the post test is going to be similar with the ones that we're practicing now.
Yeah, it's not working. I think this is not working.
I just opened it.
Okay. Yes, no, it is working. Let's try it for a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, in the meantime, Tigist, some people are saying that they haven't attended the previous sessions and some joined late. So at the end, if we could share all the PPTs here as we did on the first one, I think it will be great. If that's okay with you.
I've shared both lectures from session 1 and 2. You can find it in the chat box.
Yes, thank you. And we'll share this one at the end, right?
I have already shared it to Mohammed, but I think I can drop it here. I have also shared today's lecture, so I think we're done. So I think it would be great if you guys all practice it after the session. So I think we can proceed, right?
Yes, let's move on, please. Thank you.
Okay. Data management is very important, but I don't know why the master's program don't have any session for it. I don't know why, but I mean, improperly managed data will lead to a very unacceptable analysis, and I'll show you some of the results later. So after doing the coding and the data cleaning, the next thing that we do is data processing and organization. This is basically the time when we're going to start running our analysis, our descriptive statistics. When we run descriptive statistics, it's highly likely that we're going to encounter some data distribution problems that we should deal with before doing our final analysis. That's why we call it a preliminary analysis, because it's analysis by itself. We're going to run descriptive statistics and see if our data needs further management before doing the final analysis that we're going to use it as our result. So in data processing and organization, the first thing that we do is we run frequency for all of our variables, and we check the following two important things. The first one is if we have small frequencies. What we call small frequencies, like just don't take this as a rule, but it's an important guide. If your variable has one response category which is less than 5%, then this counts as a small frequency. For example, if we have for gender, I'm sorry, if we have one female, two male, and if the females are like 2.3% and the males are like 97.7%, then this is one of the response for gender is less than 5%. And if we analyze this data if we include this type of data in our regression analysis, it will lead to a very inaccurate result that we can see from a very wide confidence interval. So we don't want to include such type of variables in our regression analysis, but instead of deciding not to include it, there are some data management techniques that we can use to make more meaning out of the data instead of just rejecting it. That's what we're going to see now. And the other thing that we're going to check is, other than small frequencies, if there's a coding error. If there's a coding error, the errors that we have seen in the previous slide, we have to deal with it. And even after properly coding it, it's always a possibility that we might encounter a coding error. So we should keep that in mind. So after running the frequency and checking for the presence of small frequencies and coding errors, then we do data transformation to manage these problems. So data transformation can be creating new codes, especially for questions that we have seen, like partly or entirely open-ended questions and numeric variables, or it could be merging a group of responses so that we can handle small frequencies, or it could be recoding. So we have originally coded our data based on our prior understanding of the problem, but after the data is collected, we might need to do a recategorization and recoding of our data. So all of these things can be done using the data transformation command on our statistical software. So since the two most important problems are handling small frequencies and the transformation, let's say handling small frequencies. Let's say this is the response that we get for drug discontinuation reasons for our research. And as you can see, these two variables, they have less than 5% response. they have less than 5% response. So these are small frequencies. We don't want them to be, we don't want this variable to be included in our regression analysis as it is, because it's going to lead to a very inaccurate result. So what we can do is we either can do data transformation by merging and recoding of the entire variable so that it can give us a more acceptable response category, or what we can do is we do not have to consider it for further regression analysis. So we can present the description in a descriptive table, but we do not enter our variable for regression analysis. What are the conditions? We will see. So in data transformation, what we do is we create new codes, for example, coding the open-ended questions, coding numerical values, or it could be creating new codes from other response groups. For example, the same response that we have seen earlier, if we have what we originally coded, it is like 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we believed the other response categories are not going to be that much, and this coding is going to work out. But after the data is collected among the other response groups, if we find that religion has a higher response rate of like 21.3%, then we should reconsider our original coding, and we should create a different code. So what I can do is I can keep the original codes for the first 3, and I can give religion the code of 4, and I can give other group the code of 5. So instead of the originally planned 4 codes for response category, we can have 5 response category, which we changed based on the result we obtained from our analysis. So the other thing that we can do is we can create other group from already assigned categories. We can encounter the opposite of what we have encountered now. For example, this same variable, what is originally coded as like 1, 2, 3, 4 in other groups, or we can make it like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We believed unavailability of drug and cost of drug are like one of the major reasons for drug discontinuation. But when the data is collected, what we get is a very small response for these 2 variables. So what we can do is, instead of keeping these variables as they are and not including it in a regression analysis, what we can do is we can merge these 2 groups together so that they will give us like something around 8%, and we can include them in other groups. So our code will be revised as this will be 1, religion will be 2, like lack of family support will be 3, and these 2 will be other groups as together and coded as 4. So what we have originally coded has to be changed so that our variable has a reasonably answered responses, which can be included for regression analysis. So the other data transformation that we can do is merging groups. When we merge groups, what we can do is we can create a new group, and we can give it a new code. For example, the one that we have seen so far. So this is coded as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 originally, but these 2, they have small frequencies. So when we merge them, we can give them either other group, or if the 2 variables that we want to merge together have some common, so if they share some common category, we can give them that. For example, if the cost of the drug is, if the drug is expensive, the patient doesn't buy the drug. If the drug is not available, the patient can't have the drug. So we can merge the 2 groups, and we can give them like lack of accessibility or accessibility of drug. Or if you can't find a single name to put them together, we can give the name of other for these 2 groups, and we can merge it as 1. So the other is from what we have already coded, we can add one of the response into an already created other group. For example, for this same variable coded as 1, 2, 3, and 4, the cost of the drug has a very small response of 3%. So we can't, if we don't feel like merging it with the above category, when the best thing to do is to merge the cost of the drug into the other group, so that our code will be revised as 1 for drug side effect, 2 for unavailability of drug, and 3 for other, by adding the cost of the drug into the other groups. So these are ways of merging our groups. And again, when we recode our data, what we use is a data transformation technique, and there's actually a transformation command on our statistical software that we can use to do these things. The last one is recoding. While transforming our data, what we do is recoding. Sometimes if there's an electronic database from the institution that we want to get our data for our study, the codes might not be as we want them to be if somebody shares us the electronic data. So we have to recode some of the variables so that it matches our interest, our purpose of analysis. So if you get the dependent variable coded as 1 and 2, it's always advisable to change that into 0 and 1 for the reason that I said earlier. Some of the softwares do not accept a dependent variable, which is not coded as 0 and 1. The other is if we're like collecting the data from different sources. Some of the sources, let's say if we're conducting the research in 4 different institutions, and some of the institutions' electronic database codes gender as 1 and 2, the other as 0 and 1, the other might flip the male and female as 1 and 2. So instead of trying to use all of these data as it is, the best thing to do is trying to give them one consistent code and recoding all the data sets that we obtain from the different records. The other is when we record our variables, when we create new variables and merge groups, as we have seen on the previous slide, what we're doing is basically recoding. So we have a variable which is coded as 1, 2, 3, 4, but since we find response rate to have a very low response, we merged it with 4, and we created a new set of code, which is 1, 2, 3. So this merging groups and creating new groups is also a process of recording. So recording is always on the table when we're doing our analysis. So I think it's good to see the data processing and organization practice for, again, 2-3 minutes, and we can proceed to the discussion. Teddy? Do you have anything?
No, that's a great idea. Let's move on.
Okay, I have shared you the link, and I have unlocked the form. You can start working on it, like 2-3 minutes.
While you're working, I'm reading that some people were not able to get the PPTs that we shared on the chat box. Is it a lot of people or just few of you? I see at least a couple of people saying that.
I think we can share all the lectures for Mohammed, and he can share them through email, maybe.
Yeah, my only problem with that is I'm not sure if he has the email address for everybody that is here. So since this is recorded, maybe you can drop your email addresses in the chat box, and Mohammed might take it from there to send you through email. Yes, thank you. So keep on sending your email addresses. And we're joined by someone from EMA as well. I'm not sure if it's Mohammed or someone else, but they will make sure they take out this email addresses and send you at once. Yeah, and some of you are also asking about certification. So Emma will post a post test before the session ends, and you'll respond to that. And I'm sure you'll get certified for it.
The post test is like pretty much the same as the exercises, and it would be great if you all try it before the post test.
Yeah, I think it's better if you could take over now, TG.
Okay, thank you, Teddy. Today's session is more of a principle. It would be great if we can see it using a data. Maybe we can make the next session more of a practical session where we can see data management using a data. I'm Muslim. Mohammed Kalla, I don't know. Mohammed, do you think it's a good idea? Okay, I haven't looked all of the exercises. Mohammed?
Would you repeat, please? TJ, I was taking their email and I didn't hear what you have said.
The
Sorry.
data management ትንሽ internalize ማድረግም ይፈልጋል, and it will make more sense if we practice using a data on a software. So we can make next session data management practical session. We might have a problem maybe with the post test. I don't know. It's going to be maybe again just theoretical questions, but we can practice that. I don't know.
Yeah, we can do that. That's
Okay.
a good idea.
Okay, if the audience has a different idea, maybe.
Yeah, we can hit the
I strongly
response on the
recommend that.
chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think what we can do is let's wrap up this one, and then at the end we'll have a few minutes to discuss on how to go forward if you're done.
I'm actually done. I'm just a bit concerned that it would be great to see some practice, but I don't think we can do it today.
Yeah.
So we can make it during our next session, maybe.
Yeah, I think we can give it like a sole one episode session for data processing management and all that.
Okay,
So,
so
I'll give it back to you.
okay, so this is what I have for today. Maybe we should open the floor for a discussion. Teddy, answer first.
All right. Mami, do you have anything to say before we move on with the questions?
Yeah, I don't have a new idea, but the issue that TJ raised was very important. I think the practical session is very important to practice what we have learned today, and particularly most of those who are far from research may not remember the practically how we can do on the SPSS or on startup. I think that would be better if we repeat it practically by taking some data, or we can avail the data if you want, and I think we can repeat that.
Okay, that's a great suggestion. So TJ and myself will take that into account and make sure that we have a practical session for the next round. I think it's going to be in 15 days from now.
Yeah, again, if anyone is working on a research currently and if they want the session to be sooner, we can make it next week. I'm okay with that if we book it early.
Okay.
Mommy, baby. If Emma doesn't have any other sessions.
I don't know. Mame will respond to that. So if you have questions, let's get into questions. I saw 2 questions on the chat box. I think one was from is it Bahailo, or I don't know. You can raise your hands and you can ask your questions, and Mame will comment on that at the end on the possibility of having it next week. So questions, please. I don't see any.
I don't know. Maybe we can take comments, Nagar, if it was confusing, if they want it to
whatever.
be delivered
Yeah.
in a different way.
Whatever you want to say, anyone, please. Okay. Dual. I'm not sure if I pronounced your name correctly. You can correct me. Go on, please. Dual Olok. You're muted. I still see that you're muted. So, Joel, can you unmute yourself and start speaking, please?
Do you hear me right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm very glad how to see from this presentation for data management and preparation analysis. It's very useful for the somebody anywhere where you do, and then you will. But and this session, because just I need some practice for doing something, like for you can give me about the 15 day or 10 day, and then you can give the data, so you will be use analysis. After that, we will send to you for the next session, you know. And secondly, you need the PowerPoint lights.
Okay, I'll give it to TG to explain more. But regarding the PowerPoint, so we've agreed
Okay.
to share it through email, and Mame is already taking down your email addresses, and he will be able to send it to you at the end of this
Yeah.
call. But
Yeah,
we've
for
also
data,
shared it here.
great.
I'm
For
actually,
data, and then you can share it.
Okay, TG over to you.
yeah, I'm
Okay,
actually dropping it now too. I don't know. It's because everyone's texting that the text get lost in the middle. Yeah, again. Yeah, I've shared you the PowerPoints, all of them, all the 3 lectures. Just now, I don't know.
yeah.
It gets lost
Everybody
because
may be,
everyone texts. I know.
yeah, everybody, you may be horny, you know. Yeah.
Maybe, Mommy, we can create a folder of the PowerPoints on a drive, and we can share them the link. I don't know, on the email
Okay.
group. I think that will make
Yeah.
everyone's life easier.
Okay, just let you try how to make a plan. How did you get that done?
Yeah, I think TG that's better because EMA already has a CME recorded platform in their I don't know, in their website. So if they could also arrange similar platform under there, it will be, I think, one package and better. Maybe Mame will
Yeah.
take this. Yeah.
That
Okay,
is simple
thank
one.
you.
The way you can, the simple one, the way you can do this one, everybody will be get easy. Because if everybody you will be follower, and then you can learn the new idea for this sheet, you know. And even again,
Yeah.
you will be revised around the PowerPoint. Also, it's very
Yeah.
interesting to be getting on this one, and then another audience, and then you need it.
Okay. Yeah. Mame said it will be published on EMA website. So that should be easy for you, I hope. If not,
Oh, okay, no problem.
you can always check us back.
Okay,
Thank you
great.
so much, Dole.
Thank you.
We move on to AH. I don't know who AH is, but you may continue. If you could
Okay,
introduce
thank you
yourself, that'll be great.
for nice update. I have been entering data on AP Info. Does AP Info, my fear is that need coding or not? Or can I enter all the data as a raw, or coding is necessary for entering into AP Info?
No, let me apply me.
Okay.
For the using for the
Yeah, TG, you might comment on this.
Okay. So I'm not sure if I get the question clearly, but I think what he's saying is when we enter the data on EP info, are we expected to code it, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, we should.
Or
Okay.
continue.
Okay, I think maybe you can explain more.
I'm entering data in EP info, and my fear is if there is a problem in analyzing during analysis, because my data are not coded. Is it necessary to code at EP info to before entering the raw data, or coding is at the level of SPSS and analysis?
Thank you. That's a very nice question. Our normally coding and data management is usually done on EP info. I personally prefer to do it on a software that I am going to use for the analysis as well, like Spaces or Stata. But you can, what's normally recommended is to do the coding and the management on the EP info software, because it's designed to do data management and coding. So yes, you have to code it, but if you did not code it so far, what you can do is export the data to Spaces and code the data there, but the most preferred one is to code it on the EP info itself. And EP info, since it's a CDC software, you can access all of the EP info guides on the CDC YouTube channel. You can search, and it's very easy to use. And yes, you should code it. That's my recommendation.
Thank you, TG. I see also somebody else asking on the chat box. If you could raise your hand and speak it out, it will be better. And in the meantime, the post test and the evaluations are posted on the chat box. So please go ahead and respond to that as well. So Subalo, you may ask your question now. Subalo is not asking. Anyone else? If you
I
have
think
comments.
I think the question is like, how do we import data from Excel to Spaces? Maybe we can address that on our next session together with the data management practice.
I think that's better. Anyone else? Come on, say something. I see 79 people and you should say something. Was it good? Was it bad? What should we improve? If you don't have questions, you can also comment on this. Say something. We want to hear you speak. I don't see anyone. Okay. As Fahan said, can't we do the analysis on EP for itself?
Sure, we can do the analysis on EP info, but EP info has limitation and it's only can do the basic analysis. And if we're doing that, yes, we can use it. But if we want to do advanced statistics, especially the regression and other, besides the interfaces, the interface of the Spaces is more comfortable for me personally, but sure, you can use it. It's fine. People can do analyze their data using Excel. You know that, right? Excel can do t-test, chi-square test, and others. And you can even use that. But if you do more advanced statistics, you have to use Spaces, and even more advanced statistics, you have to use data. And even above that, you have to use R for further analysis. So sure, you can use it.
Yeah, and also if you want to publish some stuff, there is a specific expectation of analytical software that you should use. So you have to take that one into account as well. Are we supposed, okay, what else? All right. So Dual is also raising his hand, so I'll give it back to him once more. Okay. I don't think we have any more speakers. Duo, if you want to say something, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself, please? Okay. So, how many of you are taking master's classes, or doing some sort of research, even if you are not taking a class? You can show me through the chat box, or you can raise your hand or something. Okay, I see. All right, some people. All right. Okay, some of you, then these sessions will be helping, if you want to get more feedback, urgently, then maybe you should reach out to TG if we're not able to deliver it in time, if you're running against time, you can reach out to her, and there are different platforms on Medical Research Lounge as well. So I think that's the best way to do it now. If you have any questions, you can always seek help rather than making it, through a struggle. So I'm hoping the hands raised are showing me that you're doing some research or you're doing MPH. If it is a question or a comment, please go ahead. No, okay. So Tigist, I'll give it back to you. You can close it off.
Actually, I think I'm done. It's very nice to have a research interested audience, and በኤማስ ኮመርስ በኩል እንግዲህ we'll try our best to cover all the topics. And thank you. As you said, if you have any question, you can contact me. Address ሁሌ ስለምጠይቁኝ slide ላይ include አድርጌዋለሁ. You can find my address there. Thank you, Teddy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. So we're trying to make this one regular. I'm sure TG might have told you previously. So we're going to have these sessions coming regularly, and we're taking on the quantitative aspect of medical research, public health research for this rounds for so long. I mean, as much as it takes, then we probably will move on to qualitative research and also high level research, like systematic reviews, meta-analysis, and all that in the coming days, God willing. So please stay tuned and try to be, as active as possible. But I thank you so much for your participation and for your attendance today. So I'll give it back to Ima if they have last words. Otherwise, we are done for the day. I don't think they have anything else to say. Mame, do you have something?
I have been muted, and that is what I kept silent. And so our last word is probably thank you for both of you for managing this interesting session. And as usual, we will have the next session within the coming 15 days. So please stay tuned to the program, and also please try to fill the quiz now to get your certificates, and also the webinar assessment form. And I wish you good luck throughout the coming 2 weeks, and also in the future. And thank you. Have a nice time. See you next time.
Yes, thank you, Mame. One last thing maybe is for practical sessions, it's better to have, your SPSS, or if it is EPIN4 whatever, open so that you can do it while we try to do it. Otherwise, like the theories, it doesn't work. So make sure to have your laptop on and you have your SPSS opened so that you can easily follow up with us. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.